welcome to a very special guest. Mr. Lindy Jones is here. I want everybody ready to listen because you remember we've talked about making questions. I want you to think about how, why, what, and when questions. And you're going to be typing them in the chat box while he's doing his presentation.
First of all, hi, everybody. Everybody doing okay? Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Going to talk about water a little bit, but I'll let you know my background in water. First of all, I started off with a non-water treatment type of a job. It was mainly more physical. And throughout my job and career, I've been with the water department. I've been able to learn things about water. I started off learning about the maintenance of it, meaning how water gets to your home. And water normally comes to your home in pipes. And a lot of the pipes that we deal with are pretty small, but I have a little illustration here. The pipes are small, but some of the ones that we use to get to most people's homes in maybe larger areas, we use pipes. This is an illustration. Let me take it out of this plastic real quick. And some of the pipes are this big.
Whoa, that's big.
That's big. Really big.
That's a very big pipe. And here's another picture of that same pipe. You can.
Oh my God, that's big.
Okay, so now you know that pipes aren't always just the little bitty things you see. They're a lot larger. Those pipes that I just showed you, you can drive a truck through them. And that's what they do to inspect them. They drive a truck through to make sure that they are okay. But a lot of my work dealt with the maintenance of pipes and other things. But then later on, as I got deeper into my career, I started learning about water treatment. And with water treatment, there are certain chemicals that you have to add to water because in order for water to be safe to drink, there's a lot of things that have to happen. And so within a pipe, we measure water in kind of cubic feet. And so I got an example of a cubic foot right here. And I'll just show you, this is how big, this is the actual size of 1 cubic foot.
Whoa.
So that's how we are able to determine what water is. Or that's how we're able to determine how much water we're going to be treating. Because for every cubic foot, and for every big one of these, we can get almost 7.5 gallons will fit inside. You know what a gallon is, right? Like a gallon of milk. So we can get 7 of those inside of this. So that's why a lot of the chemicals that we use, we have to measure it out based on our cubic feet that we have, or the amount of water, the volume. Now, primarily, here's what you want to happen in a water treatment plant. This is what happens. You see where it says raw water?
Yes.
Okay, good. Raw water is water that has not been treated. It's water that comes from a lake, primarily a lake or a river. But in our areas that we live in, it's going to come from a lake. So raw water will come in from a lake. And then you see that first word at the top says coagulants. A coagulant is a chemical that we add to water so that the things that are in water that make us sick, it shows it up. It makes it to where we can see it. And so a coagulant allows the particles in water to start to come together. And it's an orangish liquid. We call it ferric. It's orange, it's like thick. It looks like rusty water, but it's real nice and thick. And when we add that to water, you'll see here when I'm moving my mouse, it's kind of like a rapid mix. We want it to mix it up really, really good so that we can get everything together. The little black things that are in that first area, as you move to the second box, it says flocculation at the top. Those small particles get bigger because they start to clump together. We're all able to see that? So when they come together, it's a slower mixture process. We don't want it to go as fast. We want it to mix a little bit slower so that we don't disturb it or break it up. And so once it gets a little bigger in this flocculation basin, it moves to another area, which this is called sedimentation. And what sedimentation does, once those smallest, larger, and then largest particles, once they get a lot bigger, they start to settle down at the bottom. You see this area where they're settled? Once they settle, then that water on top, which should be clear and clean by now, it moves over to an area called filtration. And what filtration does is any kind of particles that may have gotten by, it'll be filtered out by different size of media. And we call that media because it's sand and rock and gravel, and it catches all the little particles like a net, like a safety net, catches all the particles that come through. Once that water, that clean water comes through, the word says disinfection. That's where we add our chlorine. And this is really important because you have to have chlorine in order for water to be potable. Because what chlorine does, chlorine continues to fight anything that may be introduced to the water, any kind of pathogen. And a pathogen is something that makes you sick. And so that chlorine is constantly fighting. As long as it's there, the chlorine is going to fight and make sure that nothing bad gets in that water. After that water is disinfected, then it goes to a treated water storage. On the treatment plant, we call that a clear well. And once that water enters a clear well, it is now ready to be used. Once it's ready to be used and it's been in a clear well, we send it to another group called distribution. Because the water that comes to your house, it gets there by way of large pumps. And those pumps push that water at a force right around 35 pounds per square inch. One part of that treatment process that we like to do is we mentioned the disinfection side, which is going to be the chemical side. And so what we have to do is, because we're treating so much water, we have to make sure we add enough chlorine. If we don't, it can make us sick if we don't add enough chlorine, because chlorine is a constant fighter within the water. And so what I have with me today is I have something that we use. Because chlorine is so good, we can't add too much. We have to make sure we add just the right amount. And so what we have here is this is a chlorine test kit. And what this does, it determines the amount of chlorine that's in the water that you drink. And what we do throughout the city of Dallas is we go ahead and we get samples of water in different areas. When we do that, we're able to determine how much chlorine is in the system. What we use this machine to not only see how much is in there, but that'll let us know whether or not we're using too much or whether or not we're using enough. And so we use a little packet, the little test packets, and it's actually called a reagent or reactant. And what the reactant does is, if chlorine is present in water, it'll change the water a different color. And that's how we know, oh, we have too much chlorine, oh, we don't have enough chlorine. And so I have a little sample of water right here that I'm going to use. I'm going to pour it in this little container. Now, if there's chlorine that's present in this water, when I add this packet, it'll react to this packet and it'll turn the water a different color. Now, depending upon the color, that's going to let me know whether I have too much or whether I don't have enough.
Mr. Jones, can we guess what color it's going to change to?
Sure. Let's get some guesses. What color you think the water will turn based on when we add the chemical to the water?
Type it in the chat box. Let's see your guesses. Yeah, what color do you think the water is going to change to?
I'm going to pour the sample water in here. I'm going to add a color packet, and depending on the amount of chlorine that's present, it's going to change this water a different color. So what's the color that you think it'll change to?
All right, I see blue, green, brown, blue, brown, blue, black, maybe green or white, red, orange, purple. All right, you guys ready?
Yes.
Hey, everybody watching?
Yes. Closely.
Are y'all serious? You seriously do want to see it, right?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
What time is your lunch period today?
Just stop.
Okay. Ooh, ready?
Yes. It's red.
Oh.
It's pink a little. It's red though.
So what does that mean?
Pink or red? It's pink. Yeah,
So
red. It's pinkish red. Who said I called it? Who said? It probably means it's kind of like polluting.
Okay, now here's the good thing. It's not necessarily polluted, but what that does, what this red color tells me, it's a lot of chlorine in the water. And that's all it does. It just tells me the amount of chlorine that's present. It doesn't mean the water's not safe to drink. So here's what I did this morning. I took regular tap water and I added 2 drops with my dropper. I added 2 drops of chlorine of the bleach. The 2 drops made the water this pink. That makes sense? So what we do is on a larger scale, we're able to tell the treatment plant, if it's really pink like that, what would we tell the treatment plant?
It's too much chlorine.
Too much chlorine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the treatment plant operator. I'm going to say, hey, I'm getting a very high amount of chlorine in sector blah, blah, blah. I'll tell him where I am. And then he's going to call the lab and say, hey, we got a problem. We need to pull it back some because we don't want to use too much chlorine. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that's what that test will do. It'll help us to know what's going on with our treatment. The illustration that we showed earlier, where we showed you the way the water moves, the treatment process, we're able to monitor that because we're on the treatment plant itself. So we'll know exactly how much we're adding, whether it's too much, because we have monitors and meters that tell us, hey, it's a good amount, it's a good amount. But once that water leaves the treatment plant and it leaves the distribution and it's going to your house, we don't know what the levels are. So we have individuals, they're called environmental specialists, and they go out and they take these readings and these tests every couple of hours just to make sure we're okay. Because that's super important that we do that.
Mr. Jones.
You're welcome. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you
Okay,
so
you're
much.
welcome.
Thank you so much for visiting us.
Bye.
Thank you for
Water.
All right, y'all take care.
birthday.
Happy Earth
Oh,
Day.
thank you.